Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar. Today, I have Jeffrey Bezin from Intuiface, the evangelist for the Intuiface platform that you'll see soon is a very interesting platform that allows you to create rich interactive content with no coding and now works on BrightSign players. He's also going to give us an example of a presentation using Nexmosphere interactive sensors, so that all ties in together. So without further ado, I am going to pass it over to Jeff, and he can give us a good idea of what's of this exciting platform.
Jean-Marc, thank you very much. I want to thank Jean-Marc and Thorvin for giving us this opportunity. We're certainly familiar with Thorvin, and we know that BrightSign is a big part of their business, and I think you're here because it's a big part of your business. The reason I'm here is because Intuiface addresses a restriction when it comes to BrightSign, which is the ease with which one can adopt interactive approaches in physical spaces. Certainly BrightSign is very adept, both its own CMS as well as third-party CMSs, very adept at enabling the provisioning and usage of traditional broadcast digital signage. However, when it comes to interactivity, it's fairly limited. Certainly it didn't start with interactivity in mind. It's something it did sort of after the fact. Intuiface was born to facilitate the creation, deployment, measurement, and management of interactive digital experiences. I will share with you sort of a high-level view of what exactly Intuiface is. I will give you a product demonstration to show you how it works. And as Jean-Marc said, I will do that in the context of Nexmosphere and their sensors and actuators. And then I'll wrap up with just a little bit of logistics about supported BrightSign platforms and provisioning and that sort of thing.
And one thing,
go ahead.
If people have questions, they can send them in as chat messages, and
that's right. So it's that questions panel in the GoToWebinar toolbar. Yeah. I can't hear you, Jean-Marc and I can't hear you, but if you type your questions in the questions panel, we'll see it. And if I have some natural breakpoints in the presentation, I can answer them on the fly. Certainly we'll stick around at the end for a live Q&A as well. Let's get started, shall we? So what is Intuiface? It is a no-code platform dedicated to the creation, integration, deployment, and analysis of interactive digital experiences. Not touch digital experiences, interactive. So in fact, multiple kinds. It was created it first shipped in about 2012, and that was a world in which signage was not something you touched. When Intuiface first shipped, our customers were building for kiosks. It was a kiosk software in the shopping mall, in the museum, in the sales office, you know, that sort of thing. And long story short, over time, the digital signage industry and the kiosk industry sort of converged. These days, there's really no distinction. If I can touch it, is it a sign? Is it a kiosk? It doesn't really matter. So you're using Intuiface to create interactive digital experiences for physical places. This is not about websites. It's not about mobile apps. It's about the bank, the hotel, the museum, the sales office, that sort of thing. At a high level, what is Intuiface? Well, it lets you incorporate all different kinds of human-machine interaction, multi-touch, computer vision, gestures, sensors, speech, and more. Lots of different types of interactivity fall underneath the Intuiface umbrella, and all of them, it's a no-code integration. It just works. You can create very sophisticated and responsive workflows, meaning essentially conditionals. If these certain conditions are in effect, then do this. If it's a 30-year-old female on a rainy day, then show that. This kind of workflow is actually fairly easy to produce in Intuiface with Nexmosphere. If this particular RFID tag is lifted, then play this video. You can build lift and learn scenarios using Intuiface and Nexmosphere literally in minutes. It's not hard to do. You control every single pixel of a design, Intuiface is not a library of templates or of pre-built applications for particular verticals and use cases. It's a free-form, enterprise-class authoring tool. You literally control every single pixel. It's your images, your videos, documents, 3D models, websites, audio files, on and on. Any storyboard, any layout, any design. I'm not making this up. We'll go to trade shows, and you can imagine we have lots of customers using us at trade shows. A savvy Intuiface user, I can't tell it's Intuiface because they literally control every aspect of the visual. There's no giveaway. There's nothing cookie cutter about it. One of the things that makes digital content sticky is relevance, right? The more personal it is, the more meaningful it is in real time, the stickier it gets. Certainly interaction is one way to make it sticky, but making it personal is even better, which is why we also invested heavily in making it easy to connect your experience to the back office, to the cloud. Any data source, any business logic, any device amongst the Internet of Things, we have also built a mechanism for integrating with those, making it as easy as possible. In fact, with web APIs in particular, we have a tool that automatically creates integrations with web APIs. That's a read from and a write to. It's a live dynamic connection with any back office system, any public or private service that is accessible through a web API. We have customers building retail endless aisle kiosks with Intuiface. So this is way more than bullet points on a slide. We do support 7 different platforms. Certainly BrightSign is the most recent, and we were thrilled to do it. It's the largest media player vendor on the planet, but we do support other platforms as well. And that's because customers have different budgets and different deployment requirements and pre-existing relationships. And so the nice thing is when you build an experience, you really don't have to worry about the platform. It works no matter what. It just, maybe the one thing that could be somewhat of a variable is the performance ceiling. You know, I could run a fairly complex experience on a BrightSign media player. It probably won't run on a WebOS device, right? So there are some maybe performance influences for picking a platform, but broadly speaking, people pick what's most appropriate for their deployment. We have a very robust analytics feature built into Intuiface, and this was born out of a need we saw among our customers, which was the total lack of competency and even ability to perform analytics in a traditional digital signage deployment. When it's a broadcast digital sign, what do you measure? Right? You would never run a business without metrics, but how would you manage your digital signage deployment with metrics? What were you going to measure? At best, they were secondary measures, and we all know correlation is not causation. So it was very hard to measure the effectiveness of a campaign, to learn from that campaign. And a side effect is we didn't even build the competency in the industry because nobody could really do it. With interactivity, you have a ton to measure. You don't just know what they touched, but if there was a camera, you know it was a 30-year-old female. If you have integrations with the cloud, you know the weather outside and the latest sports score, all of which provides context to the interaction. All of this information is available. All of it colors the interaction, and all of that information can be collected and then analyzed. This is not just about data collection. You can even build your own charts and dashboards, and I'll dive into that a little more deeper in a little bit. But all of that is built underneath the Intuiface umbrella. So customers of ours who have no idea how to do analytics can now do it. Agencies and integrators using Intuiface in their projects now have a KPI service, an analytics service to sell. It was very popular among our install base when we introduced it. Finally, we are the only product in the digital signage industry that is ISO 27001 certified. That is the information security standard produced by the ISO group. We are the only one with that certification. There is a North American fairly equivalent thing referred to as SOC 2. There's a couple companies with that. Really only recognized in North America, though it's leaking out a little bit. 27001 is a global standard for information security. You know, selfishly, it's good for us because we used to get multi-page RFI documents from the IT organization. What do you do about this? What do you do about this? Now we just give them the certificate, and we've just filled out a 6-page form. From our customer's perspective, we are guaranteeing the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of any information that touches our platform. So it's great news. It's interesting, the digital signage industry hasn't really said much about information security either. There's pretty much not another discipline on the planet that doesn't already talk about information security. If any of you use change management or project management, they all talk about information security. Digital signage, not so much, which is crazy because it's on a lot of corporate networks. There's a lot of corporate information, private information going back and forth. It's a bit of a hole, but not a hole for Intuiface. We've invested in that. It took us 18 months to get that certification. So that's what it is. Why should you care, right? So I kind of gave you a sense of what it does, but does it really make a difference? Well, in fact, it makes a big difference. As we look at our customers, as I said, we first shipped Intuiface back in 2012. We've had thousands of customers and tens of thousands of deployments and years of customer feedback. It has been shown that it is up to 80% cost savings and 60% faster versus custom development, which maybe logically shouldn't be a surprise. If we really facilitate all the things I said and do it with a no-code platform, and the output meets or exceeds what you can do with interactivity and custom development, it should be cheaper and it should be faster. And that's what we're seeing by a wide margin. There are other benefits as well. For example, pre-sales. Because it is so easy to build things with Intuiface, you can prototype and wireframe during the pre-sales process, which is number one, pretty cool that you can do that. But number two, really getting on the same page with your prospect and making sure that they can achieve what it is they want to achieve on the hardware you're providing them. It does give instant feedback. You will see as I do the demo that you can immediately see what you're building and how it works and is it working. You don't have to go through QA cycles and check it in and check it out, and it's immediate feedback. So you can be very agile. For our agency and integrator clients, it's a big scale motivator, right? If it's easier and faster and cheaper to deliver projects, you can take on more projects. You can take the people on the bench, assign them to the big projects, and have a smaller number of group taking on a large volume of small and mid-size. You can do any combination you can think of, but certainly it really helps scale because you're not spinning your wheels on one project, right, doing custom dev. Not only do you have fast feedback at the design stage, but you also have fast turnaround just on projects. You deploy it, it's in the field. Hopefully you're doing analytics. You're learning from that deployment. Your client is watching how things are working, and you decide we need to change this, we need to improve that, we got to add this, and you can easily iterate through it and push out those deployments in a day. And well, if it's a simple change, maybe it's in a minute, but all the traditional digital signage workflows like remote deployment are possible, but super simple to create really any kind of customization you can think of. The agility is just, not only is it in pre-sales and in development and in delivery, but you can continue to make changes on the fly. It's easy to upsell to new projects or additional add-ons to existing projects because you're proving how easy it is to make those changes. The analytics capability makes it very easy to prove the effectiveness of your deployment, right? Competitively speaking, if you're up against somebody else, your ability to offer analytics and to provide measurements, to provide feedback and to monitor over time is a big differentiator. And it can be used in who knows how many contexts, right? To benefit from data collection. And so all told, it's about reducing costs, increasing margin, because again, if I can decrease, maybe instead of 50% of my effort is development, it's 10 with Intuiface, then I can meet and exceed my customers' expectations faster and more cheaply. I can competitively price and still have a higher margin than when I did custom development. And customers love you because you're super quick and you're super agile, and it makes for a great relationship. Again, this is about a product that's been shipping since 2012. This is not a version 1, so these are proven. These are absolutely the case. What exactly is Intuiface? So we got a sense of what it does and why it's pretty good for your business. What is it? This is what we call the Marketecture. It's a high-level look at the Intuiface platform. On the left of the diagram is Composer. That's the editor, the tool you will use to create your interactive content. Notice it runs on Windows. So it only runs on Windows. You can use a Mac if you want, but you first have to run Windows on the Mac using something like Boot Camp. This is the authoring tool. This is where the demo will be in a few moments. It's your media, it's your layouts and storyboards. You can build anything you want. On the right side of the diagram is Player. There's the reference to the 7 OSs it supports, including BrightSign. Regardless of the platform, Player looks the same, it acts the same. The only real difference is how you get it on the device. The way one provisions Player in a BrightSign media player is different than the way one provisions Intuiface Player on an iPad, you know. But functionally, it's pretty much the same. And we have all the typical kind of support for the different kinds of processes one would expect of a traditional digital signage deployment. And that's represented by the cloud in the middle. So that cloud-hosted infrastructure provides additional capability. Composer and Player are not running in the cloud. They're running natively on the device. So it's very easy to take those devices offline. Your Intuiface deployments don't need to be online. They can come off. Of course, if there is value to connecting to the cloud, connecting to the back office, to doing analytics, then there is an incentive to be online. Through a firewall, I mean, you put all the usual restrictions in place, but there's an incentive to do that, which again is represented by this cloud in the middle. Sharing is about collaboration with other designers. It's also about previewing your work for clients so they don't have to install Composer or something like that to see it. Deploy is about remote deployment, pushing experiences to players anywhere in the world. And on the right side of the cloud diagram, you can see analytics. That's data collection, chart creation, dashboard publishing. All of your experiences on each individual player is generating its own data set. Each player is independently collecting those data sets and uploading it to the cloud. In the cloud is the Intuiface Analytics Data Hub, which is collating all of this data and making it available for analysis. You can see in the upper right-hand corner, you can export that data. You don't have to use Intuiface charts and dashboards. But again, most of our customers, they've never done analytics before. We've created a charts and dashboards feature under our umbrella. So you have Composer on the left for building, Player on the right for playing it. You have this infrastructure in the middle that gives you additional capability. The bottom third of this diagram represents all the types of integrations one can establish between your experience and data sources, business logic devices outside of Intuiface. API Explorer in the bottom left that automatically generates integrations with web APIs. You don't have to know what a web API is to create a live, dynamic, read from, write to integration with any web API on the planet. We also, though, as you can see in the center, we can work with JavaScript, .NET DLLs. There are alternatives for creating these sorts of integrations. API Explorer automates it for web APIs, for .NET DLLs or JavaScript. You do have to do a little bit of coding. It's not a service we sell. We document online how to do it. And as a developer, it's trivial, but you got to be a developer to do it. But all of these things are possible, and so your deployments are not an island. In fact, a lot of our sensor support, we support Nexmosphere sensors out of the box, but we didn't cheat. We followed the same steps you could have followed to build support for Nexmosphere. We used the same mechanism we ask you to use. We just pre-built it because we think Nexmosphere is pretty awesome, and we wanted that available out of the box. So that's Intuiface in a nutshell. Those are the different components. A little bit more about analytics. I know this could be of interest to some of you. In the upper left-hand corner, there's the chart builder. On the bottom right-hand corner, we are editing and then publishing a dashboard. I literally mean you're creating your own charts and your own dashboards. We were inspired by the tools we use to manage data to run our business, but those tools are super heavy-duty, enterprise class. You got to be an analytics dedicated person anyway. It's too advanced. So we thought, well, what do we need to do to give people the freedom to create more than 30 different kinds of charts compiled of any data they collect in their experience with pre-filters and post-filters, and to publish those charts on dashboards that can combine many different kinds of charts on a per client basis. You might have multiple clients, each with their own charts, and publish those charts to the web. And people with the URL can see those charts. You can also embed them in web pages as an iframe. So I literally mean you can do all these things. It's no pre-built charts and we're cranking certain things out. No, no, no. You have total control over everything, which is why we have agency and integrator clients selling analytics services, where they help clients identify key performance indicators, help them determine how to instrument their Intuiface experience to collect the right kind of data, building charts and ultimately dashboards that show data trends. Are we approaching our project goals? Is there something we're learning about our environment, our audience? All of that's possible with Intuiface. And for what it's worth, we do have a couple analytics services ourselves, including a free one, which maybe even you would take part in, which is walking through the process of identifying key performance indicators. So it's Intuiface independent. It's just building a mindset about identifying those KPIs. Check my time here, good. So Intuiface is applicable to any vertical and any use case. I did make this point earlier, but I want to reinforce it. Intuiface was not built for anything. In a way, it's like Lego blocks. There's a finite number of pieces when you build experiences, but an infinite number of ways to put them together. It's the same thing with Intuiface. We do have something called Intuiville. If you scan that QR code or just go to our website and look under the Learn menu, you'll see Intuiville. It's a virtual interactivity showroom in which we've identified 11 verticals and some scenarios specific to those verticals that can be enhanced with interactivity. We don't sell these apps. We don't sell templates. They're just examples. They're for inspirational purposes. If you don't see a particular industry here, it's not because we don't support it. It's not because you can't build stuff for it. We just didn't include it because among our install base, these were the big 11, and in the future, we could add others. So nothing prevents us from doing that. What's nice about Intuiville is, certainly for a lot of our customers, they haven't really thought about interactivity that much, probably because they thought it was too expensive or too hard to do. And when they discover that with Intuiface, it's actually very possible, they don't know where to start. And Intuiville is a great way to do that. It lists various scenarios. It explains why they're important, what the key Intuiface features are for facilitating that particular use case. There's examples you can download and videos you can watch. There's a lot of really cool stuff up there. Just to prove we're legit, what is this? They call this the NASCAR slide, I guess, right? We have over 1,600 customers worldwide, 70 plus countries. Again, it's not a version 1 product. It's a very heavily tested product, years of our own custom development, our own R&D, our own customer feedback. It's a legit platform solving real problems. I'm going to start transitioning over to the demo, give you a sense for how that works. I wanted to be clear because I think BrightSign is a nice baseline. If you know, I'm sorry, Nexmosphere is a nice baseline because it introduces a really useful interactivity opportunity for BrightSign deployments. And in fact, BrightSign natively supports Nexmosphere. I will show you how with Intuiface, you have a lot more flexibility than native BrightAuthor support for Nexmosphere. But conceptually, just taking a step back, that controller, and this is the XN controller, but it could be any Nexmosphere controller, just plugs right into the BrightSign box and it's working with Intuiface. We're not using the BrightAuthor integration with Nexmosphere. We're using our own, but it's just player on a BrightSign media player. There's nothing, you don't have to do anything special, okay? You plug the controller into the BrightSign box and you're using Nexmosphere with Intuiface. Not a big deal. Again, it could be any controller, it doesn't have to be XN. Great. So I'm now going to start the demo. Just a reminder, if you do have any questions, use that questions panel in the GoToWebinar toolbar. Jean-Marc is monitoring that thing. I'll keep my eye on it as well. We can answer questions on the fly, and again, I'll stick around at the end. All right, let's go to Composer. Remember, Composer is the editor. It's the tool you will use to create your interactive experiences. We have something called the Marketplace. Let me pull that up for a moment. This is Composer. I'll give you a tour in a moment, but let me pull up the Experiences panel. All of you can try Composer for free. It's totally free to evaluate. When you launch Composer, you're going to see this thing. We call it the Experiences panel. This fourth tab, the Marketplace tab, gives you access to more than 70 free experiences pre-built for you as a means of guidance and inspiration. And among them, if you do a search, NEX is an experience about working with Nexmosphere. That's the experience I'm going to show you in this demonstration. It was built to work with the XN04 demo kit from Nexmosphere. So if you have that demo kit, you plug it in and now you're using the experience. But even if you don't have the demo kit, as I'm going to show you now, you can still explore how the integration works and how you might tweak it for other uses, okay? But there's lots of experiences here in the Marketplace, and I would ask that even if you see something not relevant to what it is you might want to create or what a client might want to create, you may still want to look at the experience because, like Legos, they may have taken a design approach to address issue A. You'll use the same approach but to tackle issue B, right? So think of this as a way of seeing the different ways to arrange the Lego blocks. We just gave them reasons for living. Having a theme makes them more interesting, right? All right, so here we are in Composer. Along the top, you can see a blue ribbon with a set of circular buttons that opens up a variety of panels. And down here below is the canvas where I do my actual editing. Like any Intuiface experience, there could be multiple scenes in the experience. You can see this particular experience has 4 scenes. I happen to be on the 4th scene. You can have as many as you want. Conceptually, scenes are like slides, but as you can imagine, when content is interactive, the order in which an audience visits the scenes could be completely different from the order that you've established as the designer, right? If you have a table of contents on scene 1, their selection might send them to scene 50. Now, they don't care they're on scene 50. You shouldn't care they're on scene 50. You're not numbering these things. But under the covers, technically, they're jumping around. But that's what you want. They get to choose their own adventure. But as the designer in Composer, you organize your work, you give it names, you can all do all these sorts of things. So I have selected this particular scene. This is the scene that works with the demo kit. I'll move that over here. Let's get rid of that. All right. That's the XN04 demo kit. Now what happens is when you interact with the demo kit, things happen here inside the running experience. So for example, this button in the upper left, do you see that button in the upper left? If I've connected the XN controller to the BrightSign media player and I'm running this experience, then when you push that button in the upper left, a green circle will appear around it. And when you let go of the button, the circle will disappear. If I use RFID readers, you'll see the ID on the screen. So this shows you that you're doing something with a sensor. You can see the result on screen. Now, in this case, when you push the button, it's showing a green circle. But what you could do is when you push the button, you play a video, you navigate to a new scene, you, I don't know, open a book. I mean, there's lots of things, there's unlimited things you can do with Intuiface, I guess. So this illustrates the principle, and you can adopt and adapt that principle as much as you want. So let's look at how this works, okay? It starts with what we call an interface asset, Now, if you look on the left, there are lots of interface assets in this experience. Of particular note is the Nexmosphere interface asset. We have pre-built a connection, a support for Nexmosphere sensors and actuators. If I open what's called the X-ray panel, you'll note that the only thing we need to know is the port number if it's on Windows, or the serial port path if it's Android or BrightSign. That's the only thing we need to know. You input that during design time, and it runs. For those of you who know Nexmosphere, you also know the X-script command language. So the real trick here is not establishing the integration with Nexmosphere sensors and actuators. It just works. The real trick is to know the command language so you can prime your Intuiface experience to respond to the appropriate commands. If you look back on the left of the screen, Nexmosphere interface asset, you see that little lightning bolt? That lightning bolt means there's one or more existing trigger action pairs. When something happens, then do that. The when is a series of commands. If I see this command, then do this. If I see that other command, do that. If I see this third command, you get it? Now watch. If I hover my mouse, you can see there's a list of X script commands on the left, and each one is associated with a set of actions. This one in particular is about that button. So, Intuiface is just listening for commands. It is asynchronously listening for commands all the time. While it's listening, if it sees a command, an X script command, Nexmosphere X script command language, if it sees a command whose address is 001 and a command of 17, that means that button in the upper left-hand corner was pressed. If this particular command was identified, then show the circle. Let's see that. Show the circle and record the event for analytics. That's what this log event thing is saying. Record the event for analytics. Record the fact, look in the bottom right, there was an event. We have two parameters in this data point. A button was pressed. Which button? Button 1. Well, that means that at the end of a trade show, we know how many times button 1 was pressed. Every time it's pressed, there's a data point, and using charts and analytics, you can easily identify that on Thursday, the button was pressed 56 times. If you find that interesting, right? So all we've done to support any Nexmosphere command, any command, all you have to do is create a trigger defining which command you're listening for, and then what to do when you receive that command. That's all you're doing here. In this case, let's see, for RFID, this is for RFID. So if it's an XR controller with PB001, I believe that's the tag ID, then show the tag ID, the RFID tag ID, and log the event. Actually, this is tag placeback. I don't know the X script command language. So in this case, you can see the text here that I'm circling tag 1 placed back. So this means that tag 1 was placed back. PB is placed back. So that's pretty clear, I guess. And thus, if tag 1 is placed back, you know tag 1 was placed back. So maybe you stop the video or you navigate to the attract loop or who knows what. That's it. That's all you have to do is identify what commands you want to listen for and what to do as a result of those commands. Maybe it's clear somewhat that I can build lift and learn in seconds. I really can. There's the content creation and the layouts and the design. The whole design thing could take some time, but using Intuiface to wire the sensors to the UI and react to those sensors, you can do in seconds. If you know the X script command language, it's super quick. And you can see how much flexibility there is here. Any Nexmosphere X script command can trigger any set of actions. Intuiface has hundreds of actions. And if I'm using web APIs or some other kind of integration, the action can be outside Intuiface. If this Nexmosphere button is pressed, then turn on the lights. Well, we can do that too. Does the light controller have some sort of web accessible driver that we can communicate with? Then I'm turning on the lights too. Super simple and super flexible. Any command, any outcome, and you can adapt it to any context. It doesn't have to be retail, as it is here. I hope that's clear. I did see, it looks like there might be a question. Let me take a quick look, see if it's in context. I don't want to derail things. I'll get
Can the software be used on Mac?
Yeah, so I addressed this earlier. Composer runs on Windows. You can use Composer on a Mac if you first put Windows on the Mac, and about 15% of our install base do that using Parallels or Boot Camp. Same thing for Player. You could run Player on a Mac device, but you got to run Windows on the Mac too. So we do not run natively on a Mac, period, end of story, but certainly there are ways to put Windows on the Mac, and thus you can put Composer or Player on the Mac. All right, so I'm going to stop the demo there because we can certainly rat hole in this thing. There's tons more I can show you. Let me return to the slides and talk a little bit more about what you can do with Intuiface and Nexmosphere and on BrightSign as well. So clearly with Nexmosphere, lift and learn, place and learn. Nexmosphere does have a camera. They're also developing a gesture-based controller. No matter what it is, you can incorporate and to trigger things. Retail is an obvious example, but it doesn't have to be. And the Intuiface Analytics feature is adaptable to anything. I mean, it's not Nexmosphere specific, it's just collecting data. And so no matter what you build with Intuiface, with or without Nexmosphere, you could be acquiring data points and using them to build some insight about the success of that project. All right, BrightSign, let's talk about the technology a little bit. What supported BrightSign product lines are there? As of this recording, it's XT4, XD4, and XT3. So the higher end of the families, and the reason is because there's no limit on what you can build with Intuiface. I suppose you could create an experience with 4 videos running at the same time. We would let you do that. Probably not a great idea, but you could do that. And so our bias is to support the higher end media players to make sure there's sufficient performance capacity to accommodate maybe some aggressive designs. You can install it on other models, but we wouldn't be able to guarantee an adequate level of performance. Packaging and licensing, what does it mean to be a customer of ours? We also have a value-added reseller program, by the way, so you can also become a partner. But there are really only 3 ways you can pay us. There are only 3 ways to work with us: composer, player, and analytics. Just one composer license is sufficient for unlimited projects, unlimited changes, unlimited deployments, unlimited players. It's considered a concurrent user license. So 1 device at a time, but you can move it as often as you wish. So if you have 2 designers working at the same time, you need 2 licenses. 2 designers working 1 at a time, you only need 1 license. Player, it's platform independent. You have it or you don't. We do technically differentiate between a player for non-interactive experiences and a player for interactive experiences. You can, nobody says you couldn't, you can create traditional broadcast signage with Intuiface as well. Now you have 1 solution instead of 2 for a client. And we do have a lower cost player for the traditional broadcast signage. In this case, it's 1 player per player. Every BrightSign player would have a license. And then analytics, it's 1 per Intuiface account. Meaning if I'm an agency and I have multiple clients, I only have 1 analytics license. I can apply it to all of my clients. It's not 1 per client. Composer is your expense. Analytics would be your expense. Player would be your client's expense, right? Now, I'm not saying you're putting line items in a quote, but if you think about it, Composer and Analytics, you're using them across multiple clients, multiple projects, or your clients are doing that. Player would be each individual client's responsibility. So your cost is fairly predictable. You know what you're going to spend on Composer, you know what you're going to spend on Analytics on an annual basis. It's very predictable. The real variable cost is player, and that's not your expense. That's on a per project basis. So it should be pretty easy to manage. Great. As I mentioned, Intuiface can be evaluated for free. That's both Composer and Player. You can install Player on your BrightSign device to test it out. You can install Composer and use 100% of its design capabilities for free. The limitation is on playback. In other words, there's a watermark. You have to be online, and you get rid of those limitations with a license. But from a design perspective, everything you can build with Composer, you can build it for free. And that's just going to our website. We have over 400 articles in an online library. We call it the Help Center. And in that library are lots of articles about our BrightSign support. This article will talk to you about installation and license activation. How do you work with Control Cloud to provision player on a BrightSign media player? It talks about license activation, all that sort of thing. So all of that is available for you online. And Lots of ways to build your knowledge about Intuiface as well as to ask questions. Under the Learn menu, for example, there's Intuiville, there's the documentation. We have lots of webinars. If you go to live and recorded webinars, you can see webinars about a composer walkthrough, an analytics demonstration, and even a demonstration of working with API Explorer, to work with web APIs. All of those recordings are online. You can do it whenever. Under the Get Help menu, you don't have to be a paying customer to talk to support. It's conducted by forum, not by phone call, and so but you never wait more than a day, and these guys are awesome. And we have a user community, and we do have a bunch of partners that exist. As I mentioned, we do have a partner program. In other words, these are companies with Intuiface skills that provide design services or full service project delivery, including hardware acquisition and deployment and maintenance and that sort of thing.
And Jeff, we would be one of those companies, so that if a dealer here that's watching our webinar wanted to work with us, we have an Intuiface Composer license and could work with them to get their project off the ground.
Fantastic. Yep. So website intuiface.com. If you just want an email, and info@intuiface.com, or you don't talk to us at all. You just do the evaluation and you get started. So that's what I wanted to cover. I didn't want to take up the full hour. I'd like to see if there are any other questions. This would be now a time to ask additional questions. Is there something else I can show you? Something else I can discuss? I'm open to questions. While waiting, I think we've supported Nexmosphere for a couple of years now, year and a half. And technically, we supported Nexmosphere first before BrightSign. We were supporting Nexmosphere on Windows and Android, but we knew that BrightSign was inevitable for us. You can't not support BrightSign. That was introduced, I'm not even sure it's a full year, now that I think about it, 9 months, something like this, and brought the Nexmosphere integration along with it, because that was a no-brainer as well.
If we don't have a lot of questions, maybe it might be an idea, Jeff, to kind of show how you can do some of the interactive stuff for touchscreen with Intuiface, like the scrolling and the carousel and items like that.
Sure. I'm open to a little bit of a demo, so I don't need to save that. So I'm in Composer. Everybody can still see my screen, I hope. You can see it, Jean-Marc?
Yep.
I'm going to create a new experience. Okay, we have some templates here, just more about learning how to use Intuiface, not so much to start a project. I'll start from blank. What do I call it? Where does it get saved in the local file system? And what is the resolution of the target display? You can put anything you want. We just need to know what it is. How big is the canvas? Can be portrait or landscape. Take your pick. Don't get hung up on the names inside the boxes. They're just examples of devices with the dimensions that you see below those boxes. We even have custom exclusive to Windows. We do support multi-screen display walls, so you might use custom for that. My device is currently full HD, and so I'm just going to use full HD, which creates a new experience with nothing in it. Okay. If you have a good idea, this is great news. If you have no ideas, this could be nerve-wracking, right? So let me open up. I have a lot of media I can work with here. Well, let's start with just, you know what I'll do? Let's do this. Let me grab a background image. So I'm dragging an image that's 1920 by 1080, 1920 pixels wide, 1080 pixels tall. I've dragged that into my scene. Lots of ways to do things in Intuiface. I'm just going to right-click it and set it as the background. And now I'm literally controlling every single pixel of the design. If you look on the right, and by the way, if you've ever used a product like a Photoshop, you're going to get sort of a similar feel from this. So if I look on the right, these are the properties of the scene. Notice there are multiple property categories on the right for this particular scene. One of the properties of the scene is its background, which, yes, I set it to an image. Notice it could be a solid color, it could be an image, it could be a video, exclusive to Windows, so not BrightSign, exclusive to Windows. You can make it see-through, so you can interact with third-party applications at the same time. Here we have it set to a image, which is fine. Then I can grab a movie poster like Edward Scissorhands, drag that in. It's a WYSIWYG editor. What you see is what you get, right? So I can manipulate this however I wish. and I will play with one property on the right because I know, see on the right, it defaults to static. I want to be able to interact with it. So rather than static, let's make it free so I can interact with it. See the triangle up top? That opens play mode. We embed player in Composer so you can test your work. No reason to install player separately on the Composer device. So play, and it is automatically interactive. See that? Isn't that cool? I don't have to tell it to be interactive. I don't have to write any code. If you remember that marketplace, because what I'm showing you are some of the Lego blocks in action, right? So one of the advantages of this marketplace is you can see finished experiences. You get an understanding how all the pieces can come together. A QSR digital menu board, a museum exhibition, a restaurant menu, concierge kiosk, and on and on and on. So that's why I'm showing you the Lego blocks. You use those marketplace examples to see it all come together. On the left, you can see all the different types of media we support. All of them can be incorporated in the same scene. It's not like you can only make image walls. You can bring in any combination of stuff, including YouTube videos and websites and 3D models. We have some interactive components like buttons and text input assets. You can build forms, lots of stuff in there. What I will do is let me grab a little bit more media. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, drag that in. I have some dark colored posters. It's a dark background. I'm picking sort of the lighter colored posters. Otherwise, I might want to use a different background. I can arrange this however I wish, and you can see how easy it is to make an image wall. Just dump in a bunch of images, you have an image wall. I'm going to highlight all of these images, right click, and select Add into Group. This is the first of many collections in Intuiface, a single context for multiple items. The group collection is similar to the notion of a group in PowerPoint. I might use a group collection to make a data sheet. A title, and then a big image, and then a paragraph of text, and 3 more images, and a video, and buttons, and drop down, whatever you need. Very powerful feature. You will be using groups. Probably not the first collection you're going to use, though. There's other collections that are prettier to look at. They're meant to be a display mechanism. Let's look at a couple of those. So on the right, Properties panel, the style drop down for this group collection lets me change the collection type. You can see all the different types of collections we support. For example, the asset grid, which is rows and columns. It defaults to 1 row, multiple columns. If you look on the right, for example, orientation, I can change that from horizontal to vertical. So really, what you see is what you get. I can rapidly play with these properties. For sure, I'm going to change item width and item height. So in the bottom right, did I change it? 40, yeah, not 4th, that's better. I had 4,500, no wonder you couldn't see it. So I have resized these to fit this collection a little bit better. You'll notice some arrows on the bottom where I could tap to kind of browse through the collection. If you look on the right, nah, don't want that. I'm going to deselect Show Controls. Play. Back in play mode. And now I'm scrolling through this collection. See that? One use of a collection is as a gallery, right? That's what it's for, is a gallery. Let me change my screens. Let me get you on my touch screen here. Okay. There's other collection types. For example, back to the style dropdown, you can see we have the carousel. Everybody loves the carousel. Using the properties on the right, I'm going to decrease the viewing angle and the diameter. And stay with me on the right, in the bottom, tap item to open. See tap item to open in the bottom right? Play. So now I have my carousel, which looks awesome, right? That's super simple. And tap item to open, right? 1, 2, 3, tap item to open. Nothing is stuck inside a collection. You can pop it out. Now I can put any combination of assets in a collection. I can put collections inside collections. There's no limit on how creative you can get. And if the video is in the collection, you can play it in the collection or pop out a copy and play the copy. And the same thing goes for all different types of media. So you can use the collection construct in a variety of ways. An obvious purpose would be as a gallery sort of thing. I'd like to show you that notion. Remember we talked about triggers and actions? For example, when the X script command is identified, then do something. Let me show you a much easier example just to reinforce the notion. I'm going to grab a button to illustrate the point. Now, everything in Intuiface is triggers and actions. You saw it. The Nexmosphere interface asset had some triggers like when I get a command. Everything is triggers and actions. If the image is tapped or double tapped, if the video is played, there's hundreds of triggers. I'm using the button because it exists to be a trigger source. It's easy to demonstrate the feature. I don't know if that's the prettiest button. I can change properties on the right to make it maybe a little more visually appealing, which I guess is, debatable, but, and we'll put white on red. So simple buttons, simple ways to configure that button to make it look a little more visually appealing. Again, I didn't have to use a button at all, but we will. This button does nothing, right? We need to give it a reason for living. Here's what we'll do. If I can see the collection, hide it. If I can't see the collection, show it. We're going to toggle the visibility of the collection by using the button. I will right-click the button and select at the very bottom of the pop-up menu, add a trigger. I must have lost the button. Let's do that again. This is the trigger for the button. That's better. When the press me button is pressed and released, then do something. When then trigger action. Notice the button has multiple trigger categories. Each trigger category has multiple triggers. I'm fine with the default. Whatever you select, image, video, document, 3D model, collection, there's a set of trigger categories and triggers. When the button is pressed and released, then what? I want to toggle the visibility of the collection. Well, first I need to pick the target. The target is the carousel. What do I want? The category visibility and effects, which contains toggle visibility. I'm programming, but anybody can do this. Notice the carousel has multiple action categories. Each action category has multiple actions. That's why I say there's hundreds of triggers and hundreds of actions in Intuiface. And when you have integrations with web APIs, .NET DLLs, JavaScript applications, you have essentially introduced a new set of properties, triggers, and actions. So the opportunity is virtually unlimited. All right, pretty simple, right? 1, 2, 3, play. I can still play with my carousel, right? It works. 1, 2, 3, press me. 1, 2, 3, press me. We're back. Shouldn't be a surprise, right? But how easy was that, right? Super simple. You can imagine that when you develop pretty robust Intuiface skills, yeah, it probably is 80% faster and 60% cheaper than custom dev. And we're just scratching the surface of what you can build. This is why I was telling you to use the marketplace sample so you really get an understanding of what's possible. Let me give you one last example, an example of working with a web API. We have a lot of interface assets available out of the box. Intuiface can act like a beacon. It can read from an Excel spreadsheet and all these sorts of things. We do support Twitter. Twitter has a web API. You could have used API Explorer to build this, what we call interface asset. We pre-built it, and let me just drag it in. This is the default data template, meaning it's a default visualization of the data made available through the Twitter web API. You don't have to use this visual at all. You can totally explode it. It's just the default. If I open what we call the X-ray panel, you can see the properties, triggers, and actions exposed by the Twitter web API. So although it's some special Twitter web API in Intuiface, it looks like any other thing. It's got properties, triggers, and actions. Notice one of the properties that I can modify is the search query. I'm going to change that from Intuiface to @IBM. And notice the feed will update in real time because this is a real feed over the network. Play. So now I'm in play mode. It is interactive. I can, swipe through the tweets and, move it around the screen. Remember tap item to open? Oh yes, it still works. So even though this is coming over the wire dynamically, I can treat it as if it was static. It could be the back office ERP application. Maybe you have a hint of how one could build even an endless aisle retail kiosk using Intuiface, where you're dynamically pulling in the images and the videos, You're dynamically pulling in the prices and the product descriptions and showing those things on the fly. There's so much here, and I don't want to overwhelm you, just to kind of give you a sense of what's possible. I'm looking at the clock, Jean-Marc, so I'm going to stop there for now, see if there's other questions.
Thank you, Jeff. That was awesome.
Is it one license by player or by client? So I mentioned this earlier, players by device, 3 BrightSign players, that's 3 player licenses, 3 Intuiface player licenses. Which is why I said players that's the client expense, right? One client is 10 players, another one is 50. So one client is buying 10 players, the other is buying 50. But it's a per device, not per client. There is a question about pricing. Well, we do a really nice thing. We put our prices on our website. These are, of course, the list prices. They don't reflect volume discounts. They don't reflect prices through partners. But you can see the list prices on our website. As we discussed earlier, it's composer, player, and analytics. Here's composer pricing independent of volume discounts and multi-year discounts. Let me make this simple for you. If you want to do remote deployment, then you're using Enterprise. Enterprise is the only tier that supports remote deployment. I would imagine that most of you at some point are going to need it. You need an Enterprise plan, which is $1,800 annual. If you're in Europe, it's in euros. So this is, but for North America, it's $1,800 US. Remember, unlimited projects, unlimited changes, unlimited deployments, unlimited everything. You may need only one. So your predictable annual cost is $1,800. And that's it, no matter how many clients you have. For player, there's no plans. You either have it or you don't. This is the non-interactive player I mentioned. It's going to be traditional broadcast digital signage. This middle one is interactive digital signage. That's $240 per device for interactive, $120 per device for non-interactive. Again, that's list price, but that's where it starts. And then analytics, which you recall is you either have it or you don't. It's not per client. And here we differentiate between basic and ultimate. The main difference is the number of players. Basic would be up to 20 players. Ultimate is unlimited players. For both of them, it's multiple dashboards. And if you are an agency or an integrator, or that's who you're selling to, they can differentiate one client from another and build separate sets of dashboards for each. But at the end of the day, it's just one analytics expense across all clients. Okay. And technically, see this data collection at the bottom? That thing at the bottom is you're not using our charts and dashboards feature. You just want to collect the data with Intuiface, then analyze it someplace else. So you can do that as well. But frankly, we haven't seen anybody not do basic or ultimate just because of the convenience of the chart creation process. So I did better than a ballpark. I told you exactly what it costs, at least to start.
Well, I think that probably ends our webinar unless anybody else has got more questions.
Anything else, guys? So, Jean-Marc has a really good relationship with us. He does understand Intuiface very well. Thorvin has developed a competency for Intuiface, so they're a really good resource for understanding how it applies, where you can use it. So they're a really good partner for you. And so feel free to work through Jean-Marc and Thorvin, but of course we're here as well.
Perfect. Thank you everyone for attending. We really appreciate it.